Yes, this budget includes spending for women. It includes spending for aged care.
$17.7 billion.
These were big, visible issues that the government at least had to appear to act on after hard-fought campaigns by thousands of people. At the same time, there were a lot of problems that they thought they could get away with ignoring, but we haven't forgotten them. People without work and on low incomes were ignored. There's next to nothing for social housing in the middle of a homelessness crisis. There's nothing new for job seekers living on half the poverty line. 45,000 migrant families will now have to wait 4 years to access any government support. Meanwhile, over the last 40 years, the number of underemployed people has tripled and the number of long-term unemployed people has doubled.
In this budget,
the climate crisis gets nothing. In fact, the government pledged more than $550 million of public money to climate-wrecking gas, which will drive up pollution and force fracking on remote Aboriginal communities, land and water. Buckets of money for false climate solutions, but no new money for the real solutions: clean energy from solar, wind and batteries.
Mr. Speaker,
First Nations people get nothing but more racist policies. The racist and punitive cashless debit card, which overwhelmingly targets Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, was extended until 2023. Despite the enormous backlash against the destruction of Juukan Gorge last year and demands for new federal heritage protection laws, with just $500,000 in this budget, the government proves they don't care about protecting invaluable First Nations cultural heritage and sacred sites. This budget turns its back on First Nations people's aspirations for self-determination yet again, with chump change for community control, housing and the urgent crisis of black deaths in custody. We can't afford to wait a second longer. Women in poverty are being left out. 1 in 3 women retire with no super at all, and the tweaks in this budget do nothing to address the growing poverty crisis for older women. Single parents relying on income support, mostly women, get nothing for their urgent needs. Funding to higher education and foreign aid cut. Our ABC continues to feel the brunt of years of coalition cuts. There's nothing for our under-resourced, underfunded public hospital system. And while aged care got funding, it comes without the systemic change that the sector really needs. In short, this government is years late and billions short on the generational challenges we face. But the good news is, maybe we can change that. Morrison went from telling protesters they should be grateful they're not being shot at,
such marches are being met with bullets,
to pledging money for women's safety and health after years of ignoring the problem. His government would have completely ignored the aged care crisis if brave families and aged care workers hadn't shared their stories, if we hadn't walked the streets and dominated headlines for months. The fight is far from over, and the concessions in this budget show us that we can force their hand and effect change. So we will keep fighting until Budget Week doesn't have winners and losers. We will keep fighting until we see a budget in this country that works for us all.